community could also mature and could see to it that these systems start talking to each other. But that's on a different level. Then the initiative is mainly in the OECD world and not on the multilateral negotiations.
Thanks. And Fredrik?
I think the text we have got here on the sectorial approach is showing us that the world has changed since we negotiated the Kyoto Agreement. And there is possible to combine a cap and trade system with an sectorial approach. If a coal power plant has 1,000 grams of CO2 per produced kilowatt hour, and one plant clean it with carbon capture and storage, of course another plant, and the limit is 500 grams per kilowatt hour, then they could buy from each other. And I think we will see more of these discussions coming up towards Copenhagen, and I think the sectorial approach here, we see that discussion is coming heavily up. We see that US delegations visiting our office in Brussels is bringing up this and ask what we think about it. And we must be prepared how we can work further on how we can combine these two systems, because in my opinion there is still a need for additional efforts beside the cap and trade system, and we need to speed up the process because the prices on carbon is too low. Hopefully we will get reduced the cap heavily enough so we get up the price, but we need mechanisms until that is happening, and we must expect that will take some time after Copenhagen before that's in place also.
Sure. Ray?
Yeah, there is no inconsistency between the cap and trade system on the Kyoto level, which is between countries, and the participating part is the country, and how a country, being United States, Norway, or implement that. They can use sectorial approach or commando methods or whatever. There is no obligation to make a national system like that. When you come to what happened in Kyoto, it's obvious that the allowances that were printed there were too many, and therefore you had and will have a very low price as a consequence. The Norwegian government has tried to signal that it would like to fix that by saying that we are going to overcommit by 10%. So if the rest of the world followed that example, you would rescue also the Kyoto system. But the mistake was done, and I hope that we are not going to repeat it.
Sort of on the same subject, a questioner said that the EU ETS is working well, but there have actually been two successive price collapses in two successive phases. And happily the second price collapse wasn't quite as catastrophic as the first phase, but both of them have come from massive over-allocation in the first place because of misreporting, in the second, well, inadvertent perhaps misreporting, in the second case because nobody predicted the depth of the current recession. But that does mean that it makes cap and trade seem a little less secure and magical than we might have thought. What about the possibility of a floor on a carbon price?
Well, as I was alluding to, the carbon tax and cap and trade systems are essentially identical, with the exception of that you don't know the cost curves. You don't know how much it costs to do exactly what is prescribed in the cap and trade system. So therefore, when you go in with the carbon tax, you get uncertainty in the volume. What is the carbon tax giving you? But if you go in with the cap, you go the other way out and you get uncertainty in what the price will be.
Okay.
And obviously you can make systems that combine the two, where you go in and buy and rescue the system. They become complicated, but it's quite possible, and the United States has been a big debate about doing that. But in the cap and trade system, the amount that is reduced is a given, as long as you don't have any offsets and so forth. That is certain. In the other system, it's uncertain how much you get but the certainty is on price.
Okay, Fredrik again, and then we'll go to another question.
No, I just would like to say that I think more and more of us see the need to be sure of the volume, and maybe we need now to be sure, and I think the criticism, and I think that this also will come in the US discussion. And again, I don't think the US Senate agrees upon a blueprint of a European system. And we need now to be sure that the work is done, and that's why a sectorial approach will need to be discussed further on in Copenhagen.
Okay, great, thanks. So,
hello, my name is Björn Utgard, also from Bellona. I just had a question, and it's we have different approaches in our sessions. Ervik, you said that if markets are designed well, they work, and that's of course true. And then technology policy would say that if you design technology policy well, it also works. And then yesterday, what our magaziner told us in our workshop was that we have to work at the nexus of the private and the public sector. What are we going to do to make sure that we are letting the public and the private sector work better together? President Mkapa was involved in the Clinton initiative with HIV medicine, and what would it take to do more of that in the energy and climate field? In other words, what are the controversies we will see towards Copenhagen, and how can we overcome them in terms of combining the general cap and trade systems with the more technology-oriented systems, so that we can have the public-private partnership? Thank you.
Well, I think I can only talk about the role of the government. Whether it would attract private participation is another matter. But I think in a developing countries like mine, the role of the government is to identify the market, because the incomers don't know us very well. To identify that market and then create an investment climate that will attract the private sector to come in. So assure them of the market. If it's possible, demonstrate that the market will receive the overtures of these external investors. So in our case, for instance, in the case of HIV/AIDS and the retrovirals, we had to make sure that the government, which is really the principal purchaser of all these things, had a network of health delivery that could absorb an expanded market. And then you sought benefactors who would support the funding for the purchase of those, and then it would be prepared to facilitate the training for the delivery of those things. And then you invite these people, and they will look at that side of the market. They will be assured of the support of government in implementation. Government's funding contribution will be assured, and then it will be up to the private sector to determine that they can really make a difference. In this case, the disposition of the Clinton Foundation was very good, and it has made a great difference indeed, very successful difference. So I would say the same, for instance, as I always keep using this example of the wood fuel cookers, which are fuel efficient. If you devise those prototypes, had a demonstration effect at the annual trade fair, and then you made an example by making sure that all your secondary schools were going to convert into these new ways of creating that, then you would have a public campaign through the network of contacts of government in the country to see that this is diffused into the villages and individual households. Then a private investor might feel confident enough that if he fabricated enough of those tools and appliances and so on, they would have a ready market, and it would be for profit too. So that kind of initiative from the kind of government can draw and consolidate public-private partnership.
But if I may
Sure.
comment, because the first question was about the intersect between China and the US, for example. And just in my own observation, the comments about trust yesterday come to the heart of these questions. A lot of us have agreed over the last 2 days that technology transfer is a potential part of the solution. But you may have noticed that, for example, if a Chinese company